36 seconds. That's it. Think about that for a moment. In just 36 seconds, the single largest flying object ever built by human hands, it just became a flaming skeleton. A fall from the sky that literally echoed around the entire world. And you've probably heard the words, "Oh, the humanity." With that one single, anguished cry broadcast live over the radio, the whole dream of a new age of travel just died. The shock, the horror, the sheer disbelief, it's all packed into that one iconic phrase.
So, today we're going to unpack the incredible story of the Hindenburg. We're going to look at how this disaster wasn't just some tragic accident. No, it was the fiery, definitive end of an entire era, the age of the airship.
Okay, so that terrifying fire, that's where the story ends. But to really get a grip on how it all went so wrong, we have to rewind. We've got to go back to the beginning, to a time when everything seemed so right.
All right, part one, the age of airships. Look, before it became this icon of disaster, you have to understand, the Hindenburg was the absolute peak of technology. I mean, we're talking pure opulence. This was the future, just gliding silently through the clouds.
And I am not exaggerating one bit when I call it a flying hotel. I mean, picture this, 804 feet long. That's bigger than 3 Boeing 747s parked nose to tail. This thing wasn't just a way to get from A to B, it was a grand statement, a palace floating in the sky.
And the luxury on board, it was just staggering. We're talking passengers eating meals on fine china, listening to a custom-built aluminum piano, and just watching the world drift by from these huge panoramic windows. And get this, there's even a pressurized smoking room. I mean, just stop and think about that for a second. A dedicated room for open flame, sealed behind an airlock, on a ship filled with 7 million cubic feet of the most flammable gas in the entire universe. What could possibly go wrong, right?
But it wasn't all just about luxury, you know? It was also incredibly practical. For the people who could afford a ticket, the Hindenburg literally slashed the time it took to cross the Atlantic. A steamship would take about 5 days. This airship, just 3. It really was the Concorde of its day.
And here's the point that you have to understand, because it's absolutely crucial. This technology was considered safe, like rock-solid safe. The Zeppelin company had this impeccable track record. We're talking over 2,000 flights, 1 million miles flown, and not one single passenger fatality. Airships weren't seen as some risky experiment, they were seen as the absolute pinnacle of reliability.
So that brings us to part 2, a fatal political compromise. Okay, so if the technology itself was so sound, what on earth went wrong? Well, the answer isn't in the engineering, it's in the politics. A single, absolutely fatal compromise set the whole stage for disaster.
And it all comes down to this one thing, what's known as the hydrogen compromise. See, the Hindenburg was specifically designed from the ground up to be filled with safe, non-flammable helium, but it never got a single cubic foot of it. Instead, it was pumped full of what was, let's be honest, a massive floating bomb.
And when you put the two side by side, the choice is just stark. You've got helium over here, totally inert, it absolutely cannot burn. Then you've got hydrogen over here, wildly explosive. The problem was, the US had a complete global monopoly on helium. And because of politics, Germany was forced to use hydrogen, a gas that everyone, and I mean everyone involved, knew was incredibly dangerous.
The politics of it were pretty simple and pretty deadly. The US passed the Helium Control Act, which banned its export. Then, when the Nazi Party seized power in Germany, well, any chance of getting an exception, that just vanished into thin air. So the world's most advanced airship was denied its single most critical safety feature, all because of geopolitics.
And it didn't take long for the Nazi regime to co-opt the Hindenburg. They turned it into this giant flying billboard for their power. They slapped massive swastikas on its tail fins and would fly it low over rallies, just blasting propaganda from loudspeakers. The real irony here is that the ship's own creator, Hugo Eckener, he despised the regime, but he was totally powerless to stop them. So this beautiful symbol of German engineering got twisted into a symbol of the Third Reich.
And that brings us to part 3, the disaster scene worldwide. Because all of this, the luxury, the politics, that fatal compromise, it was all on a collision course with a stormy evening in New Jersey. And it was all about to happen right in front of an audience of cameras and microphones.
So the final flight,
It was already delayed for hours because of these nasty thunderstorms. As it was finally coming into land, the air was just crackling with static electricity. Then at 7:25 p.m., someone spotted a small glow near the tail. And that was it. In an instant, all that hydrogen found a spark, the fire just tore through the ship, faster than a person could even run.
And in just those 36 seconds, 36 people lost their lives. 13 passengers, 22 crew members, and 1 person on the ground crew. For so many of them, survival came down to nothing more than pure dumb luck, jumping at the exact right moment, or the wind just happening to shift the flames away for a split second.
But here's the thing that really, truly sealed the fate of the entire airship age. What made the Hindenburg disaster so impactful wasn't just the crash itself. It was the fact that it was the first modern tragedy to be captured on film and broadcast to a mass audience. People heard Herbert Morrison's voice crack with emotion on the radio. They saw that horrifying newsreel footage in movie theaters. For the very first time, the entire world experienced the disaster together in almost real time.
Which leads us to our final part, an industry up in smoke. The impact was immediate, and it was absolute. The very same flames that consumed the Hindenburg also consumed the entire future of airship travel.
The collapse was just so swift. Public trust, which had been built up over decades, it just evaporated overnight. All plans for passenger service were immediately canceled, and within just a few years, the other mighty Zeppelins, including the Hindenburg sister ship, were taken apart, dismantled, their aluminum melted down to go build war plans.
And, while the leading theory is pretty straightforward, a hydrogen leak ignited by a static spark from the storm, the truth is, we've never been able to prove the exact cause. The definitive reason for that first fatal spark, it's still a mystery to this day.
And that really just leaves us with this final thought. The story of the Hindenburg is this incredible chain of what-ifs. What if the weather had been clear that day? What if the US had just sold Germany the helium that the airship was designed for in the first place? How totally different might our skies look today if just one single link in that fatal chain had been broken?